If you're searching for an FM25 adventure that will have you hooked, then we've got a Football Manager save idea for you. From rebuilds to Road To Glories, youth only to the toughest challenges, let's dive in to the A to Z of FM25 saves. And for A, we're heading to Amsterdam and to Ajax. A club in crisis always makes for an engaging Football Manager save, and Ajax are certainly that. The last campaign was branded the worst in the club's history. At one point, they occupied the bottom position in Eredivisie. They exited the cup at the hands of a fourth-tier amateur side, suffered their heaviest defeat ever in De Klassiker against Feyenoord, fired their head coach and director of football and suspended their CEO after a share purchase scandal. This was a mess so great not even Jordan Henderson could clean it up. And this is all a far cry from the days where Ajax were champions of Europe, but such decline also provides opportunities for the budding FM25 player. Here is a club steeped in history who've produced some of the greatest players of their generation, one who's watched on whilst PSV and Feyenoord have lifted silverware in recent seasons. Pundits have predicted it may take 5 years before Ajax are competitive again. But could you turn the club around sooner? Using one of the most productive academies in the game to develop future stars, can you restore the sons of gods to the summit of Dutch football? From one club famed for its youth development to another, as for B, we travel to Sweden and Stockholm-based Brommapojkarna. Now, unlike Ajax, Brommapojkarna have never dominated the domestic game. In fact, they didn't appear in Sweden's top division until 2007. But whilst local rivals AIK, Hammarby and Djurgården have amassed more trophies, the Bromma boys are famed for being the country's leading developer of young players. Two of their early graduates were Bojan Jordic and John Guidetti, who went on to represent the two Manchester clubs. And in recent seasons, they've developed the likes of Anderlecht's Ludwig Augustinsson, national team and Tottenham Hotspur attacker Dejan Kulusevski, Victor Gyökeres, who scored 29 goals for Sporting last season, as well as Kulusevski's new club teammate Lucas Bergvall. Operating on attendances of 2,000 spectators has meant that Brommapojkarna have been forced to sell to survive, leading to them bouncing between Sweden's top two divisions. However, they remain the first choice destination for talented youth prospects in the country and offer you the infrastructure required to develop your own generation of wonder kids capable of winning Brommapojkarna their first domestic honour. C is for CSKA, a club from Bulgaria's capital Sofia, or two clubs to be precise. This is a tale of bitter rivalry that emerged from complex financial mismanagement. In 2014, CSKA became the first club in Eastern Europe to be listed on a stock exchange. However, this did not solve their monetary issues, and they were denied a license to compete in the top division and were demoted to the third tier. Now this is where things get murky, as with debts mounting, they were taken over by oligarch Grisha Gantchev, who was already owner of rivals Litex Lovech. Remarkably, CSKA won the Bulgarian Cup whilst in the third division, but Gantchev was eager for them to return to the top flight. So he renamed Litex as CSKA, meaning they had a license to compete in the top league. This was strongly opposed by factions of CSKA support base who felt the soul of the club was being betrayed. So they grouped together to form a rival club, CSKA 1948. And since 2020, both are in the top division, trying to overhaul the dominance of Ludogorets, who are in search of their 14th consecutive Bulgarian championship. Last season, the two faced each other in a playoff to qualify for the Europa Conference League, and as 1948 triumphed, angry CSKA Sofia fans stormed the pitch and confronted their own players. Whichever club you choose to take charge of in your FM25 adventure, you will be guaranteed an intense local rivalry and a significant challenge in your quest for honours. From the capital of Bulgaria to the capital of the US, and our first club outside of Europe. DC United participated in the inaugural season of Major League Soccer in 1996. Under coach Bruce Arena, DC secured the MLS Cup by defeating LA Galaxy in the final, and they went on to win the competition again in 1997 and 1999 and in 2004 with starlet Freddie Adu amongst their ranks. In those early seasons of MLS, DC established a dynasty, appearing in each of the first 4 finals, but now it's 20 years since they were last victorious, and in that time they've not even progressed to an MLS Cup final. Managerial giants like Wayne Rooney were unable to take United back to the promised land, but if you can navigate the complex league rules, you could draft your way to glory and return DC to the top of the tree. For E, we're back in Europe and to Belgium, where Eupen could be the setting for your FM25 adventure. The club are history makers, as in 2010 they became the first club from Belgium's small German-speaking region to reach the top division thanks to a victory in the second-tier playoffs. Since 2012, the club has been owned by the same Qatari backers that run PSG, and high-profile managers such as Claude Makélélé have spent time in the dugout. Located just 9 miles from the German border, the town has a population of just 18,000 citizens, smaller than Club Brugge's average attendance. Their own stadium, the Kerwegstadion, holds just 8,000 spectators, and last season fans watched on as Eupen slipped out of the top flight, meaning your quest for domestic dominance would begin in the second division. But if you could guide the club back to the Pro League and go on to win a maiden trophy, you would go down in history in this German region of Belgium. For F, we're heading back to a capital city and to Vienna in Austria, where the country's oldest club, First Vienna, are based. Founded in 1894 by gardeners working on the estate of a local banker, the club's blue and yellow colours date back to the jockey shirts that were donated to the gardeners when they played their first match. And as the oldest club in the nation, they play a significant part of Austria's footballing history. But they also played a key role in the formation of European club football. In 1914, they organised one of the early forerunners of the European Cup, making it all the way to the final of a competition where Britain's 3 respective cup winners were invited to play a knockout competition against teams from the continent. European success eventually occurred as they won the Mitropa Cup, and domestically they were victorious in both the Cup and the League. But recent decades have seen a gradual decline in the club's fortunes, and bankruptcy and demotion to the 5th division followed. But First Vienna are now back in Austria's second tier, and with you at the helm, perhaps a return to the Bundesliga is possible, where First Vienna can once more compete for honours. And it's just a short journey from Vienna over the border, where G is for Germany, a nation this time rather than a club. More specifically, G is for Germany's second division, where there are now an embarrassment of sleeping giants for you to revive in Football Manager, such as Hertha Berlin, former national champions and European semi-finalists, who would offer you a 75,000 capacity arena to play in, as well as a huge support base. Or Fortuna Dusseldorf, who hail from a city of more than 600,000 residents and were European Cup runners-up in 1979. Hanover are 2-time national champions, and Kaiserslautern were winning the last of their 4 league titles in the 90s. Nuremberg can boast 9 national titles and 4 cup triumphs, whilst relegated Köln were the inaugural winners of the Bundesliga and reached the UEFA Cup final in the 80s. Or you could take charge of clubs that have won European honours should you take on the challenge at Dortmund's Ruhr Valley rival Schalke, winner of the UEFA Cup in 1997, or of course as Hamburg, winners of the Bundesliga 3 times in the 70s and 80s and a European Cup. With so much choice, the biggest challenge might be deciding which of these great clubs to rebuild. We're crossing borders once more as we travel from Germany to France, where H is for Havre Athletic Club, a tempting destination for a youth-only save in FM25. Le Havre narrowly avoided relegation from Ligue 1 last season, finishing 15th in the 18-team division, and although they're yet to win Ligue 1, they did triumph in the Coupe de France in the 50s. Clearly, toppling PSG will be a difficult proposition, but the club's reputation for developing young players might go some way to helping you. Academy graduates include Paul Pogba, Premier League winner Riyad Mahrez, former Marseille forward Dimitri Payet, ex-Real Madrid midfielder Lassana Diarra, as well as Steve Mandanda, Ferland Mendy, Jean-Alain Boumsong and Vikash Dorosu. Now imagine having all of that talent at the club at the same time. That would be a Football Manager adventure worth talking about. On to I next, and a save idea for the FM daydreamers. The Football Manager who wants to get off the beaten track. IBV are from the islands of Vestmannaeyja, which lies off Iceland's southern coast. This is a place with more puffins than people, but as well as being home to bird life, it is also the location for one of the most stunning settings for a football stadium. Hasteinsvolla has a capacity of just over 2,000 and is nestled against the cliffs that flank the islands. Even by Icelandic standards, this area is remote, with visiting teams forced to travel by ferry to the island. IBV are a part-time club who, after suffering relegation last season, are now competing in Iceland's second tier. However, they have some notable achievements in their history, including 5 Icelandic Cup wins, and they've been national champions 3 times. Former players include England goalkeeper David James, and IBV were the club that produced Tryggvi Guðmundsson, a native of the islands who is the all-time leading scorer in Iceland's top division. They also developed internationals such as Hermann Hreitharsson, and even David Moyes started his career in IBV's youth teams. This would be a save for managers that enjoy the challenge of growing a small side, but it could also be the perfect setting for your FM25 Builder Nation. From Europe to Asia for J, and to Malaysia, where Johor Darul Takzim, or JDT, have wrapped up their 10th consecutive league title. Last season, they completed the domestic treble, their second in a row. They have a state-of-the-art stadium and the financial backing of Tunku Ismail, and they became the first Malaysian club to win a continental trophy. They've celebrated invincible league campaigns and attracted foreign stars such as Fernando Forestieri, yet they also contribute the most domestic players to the national team. It's been so long since another club won the Super League that they were aside from Singapore, who were dissolved in 2015. JDT are clearly so dominant that taking charge of them in FM25 would not offer much of a challenge. But what about taking charge of one of the other clubs in Malaysia and trying to challenge the JDT dominance? Maybe a club such as Selangor, last season's runners-up, and a highly successful club in Malaysia before the formation of the Super League in 2004, or Kuala Lumpur City, the last side to win a domestic trophy other than JDT. Whichever club you choose, it will be an almighty challenge to catch the Southern Tigers from Johor. And speaking of challenges, that brings us to Turkey, where K is for Kazim Pasha. Since the creation of the Super League in 1959, only 6 clubs have won the Turkish title. Bursaspor won it once and Trabzonspor 7 times. But during every other season, the title has been won by a club from Istanbul. Galatasaray lead the way with 24 league wins and have signed global stars in pursuit of a 25th. Next come Fenerbahce with 19, who have tasked Jose Mourinho with winning the 20th that would secure a 4th star for the club. And then we have Besiktas, who have 16 titles. And then there's Başakşehir, who have just 1. So imagine the challenge facing Istanbul's other clubs. Sides such as Kazim Pasha. Founded in 1921, the club has yet to win a major trophy, but between 2004 and 2007, they secured consecutive promotions to move from the 3rd division to the 1st. Last season, they recorded their best ever finish when coming 5th in the Super League, narrowly missing out on continental qualification. But with you in charge, could one of Istanbul's smaller clubs finally build a squad that can challenge the established order? It's taken us until the letter L to make it to South America, but we're finally here, and Argentina's Lanús could be the setting of your first FM25 save. Lying just south of Argentina's capital, Lanús are a club dreaming of a repeat of the greatest season in their history. In 2016, Argentina's top division was split between 2 pools, with the winners of each competing in a final to determine the national champions. Lanús topped a pool that contained powerhouses such as Boca Juniors, and in the final they faced San Lorenzo, themselves Copa Libertadores winners just 2 years earlier. Lanús led 1-0 at the interval and blew their opponents away in the second half, scoring 3 more times in a 4-0 victory, with a young Miguel Almiron scoring one of the goals. But during the next season, Lanús would experience heartbreak as they progressed to their first Copa Libertadores final, defeating River Plate in the semis, only to succumb to Brazilian side Grêmio in the final. 8 Argentinian clubs have won the continent's top prize, so can you atone for their defeat in 2017 and make Lanús the 9th? For M, we're heading to another country where very few clubs have been national champions. In fact, Greek football has been dominated by 2 cities, Athens and the nearby port of Piraeus, home to Olympiakos, winners of a record 47 league titles and the first Greek side to win a European trophy, and in Athens itself, Panathinaikos, the winners of 20 titles, and AEK, winners of 13. Apart from 1 lone title won by Larissa in 1988, the remaining 7 league championships have all been won by clubs from Thessaloniki. Greece's second city is home to 1 million residents and is the capital of the region of Macedonia, where last season PAOK won their 4th domestic league titles and rivals Aris have won 3. But the city is also home to 2 other sides that you can take charge of in Football Manager. Iraklis are themselves league runners-up 3 times and winners of the Greek Cup. But arguably a bigger challenge awaits Macedonikos, a club that would be ideal for a Greek Road to Glory challenge. Their home is an 8,000 capacity stadium, and the club were formed in 1928 by refugees fleeing the Greco-Turkish War. They've made it as far as Greek Cup semi-finals and appeared in the Super League, but over the course of this century they've slipped as low as the 4th division but have now fought their way back to the 2nd. Making an impression on Thessaloniki football will be difficult enough, never mind trying to win a domestic trophy, but if you could achieve that feat with this small side, it might just become the greatest achievement in Greek football. But now it's time to pay a visit to the Portuguese League, where on the island of Madeira, Nacional are a top division side that would also pose a significant challenge to the budding Football Manager. Following Maritimo's relegation to the 2nd division, Nacional are Madeira's sole representatives in the top flight. Unlike Maritimo, Nacional are still searching for their first major trophy, but they did reach the semi-finals of the Cup as recently as 2023, and they have qualified for the Europa League on 5 occasions this century, as well as being the club where a young Cristiano Ronaldo honed his skills. Like Greece, Portugal is a nation where football has been dominated by just 2 cities, with Lisbon clubs winning 59 league titles and sides from Porto winning 31. But if you could build Nacional into a side capable of competing for trophies and eventually bring a league title to Madeira, that would be an achievement to rival those of CR7. Back to Asia next, and O is for Omiya Aradija, a club competing in Japan's 3rd division. They are based in Saitama, the city that is also home to Urawa Red Diamonds, the 3 times champions of Asia. Clearly, turning a J3 side into one capable of rivaling their neighbours is going to be an uphill struggle, but the club have participated in J1 in the past, and the Squirrels, as they are nicknamed, have a secret weapon. They are the latest side to join the Red Bull franchise network, having been taken over in August. This should equip you with the finances to develop the club's facilities and build a playing squad capable of rising through the divisions and going toe-to-toe with the nation's biggest clubs. From a side with an exciting future to one with a glorious past, as we travel to Italy in the city of Parma, a place famed for its culinary produce, and for a decade one of Europe's most successful cup teams. Their first prosperous period came under manager Nevio Scala. He guided Parma to a Coppa Italia victory in 1992, the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1993, the final of the same competition a year later, before overseeing a UEFA Cup win in 1995. Scala was succeeded by Carlo Ancelotti, who failed to win a trophy but did guide Parma to a runners-up spot in the league before Alberto Malassani took the helm. As Parma won the Coppa Italia and the UEFA Cup again, a third domestic cup was secured in 2002, but by 2004 the club's backer, the dairy giant Parmalat, went bankrupt. Further financial woes followed in 2015 and a refounded Parma started life in Serie D, but after topping the second division last season, the club take up a place in Serie A for FM25. Could you turn Parma into serial cup winners once more, and who knows, maybe a first Scudetto could be secured too? To another club with a successful past, and Queen's Park in Scotland. Like First Vienna earlier in our list, Queen's Park are the oldest club from their respective nation, having been formed in 1867. They were once the nation's leading side, helping develop the rules of the game as well as organising the national team. Back during an era when Scottish sides were invited to participate in the English FA Cup, Queen's Park were twice runners-up, and they won the Scottish Cup 10 times before 1900. However, as the Scottish game turned professional, Queen's Park remained amateur and committed to the motto "play for the sake of playing." For 126 years, Queen's Park continued to compete as amateurs in a professional game, bringing through players such as Liverpool's Andrew Robertson. But due to their amateur status, they could not receive a fee for the players they developed. So in 2019, club members voted to turn Queen's Park professional, hoping that they could compete on a more level playing field. This resulted in back-to-back promotions for the Spiders, and they are now hosting second-tier football at their Hampden Park home. But for your Football Manager 2025 adventure, could you steer them back to the summit of the national game, winning trophies once more for Scotland's oldest side? We fly north next to Norway and the city of Trondheim, where Rosenborg offer you the opportunity to rebuild the club that once dominated the league and made waves in Europe. Rosenborg first won the league in 1967, but it was between 1990 and 2018 where they enjoyed almost constant success. Across those 29 seasons, they were champions 21 times, including 13 in a row between 1992 and 2004. They appeared in the Champions League group stages 11 times, going as far as the quarterfinals, and achieved famous European victories against the likes of AC Milan and Real Madrid. But Norway's most decorated club have not won a trophy since 2018, only finishing in the top 3 once in that time. And so the stage is set for your spell in charge of the club in FM25 as you attempt to oversee a new era of domestic dominance before becoming the first Norwegian side to win a continental competition. After the cool climate of Norway, we head back to South America and to what could be one of the toughest rebuilds in FM25. Santos were formed in 1912 on the same day the Titanic sunk. For over a century, this small club from a port to the south of Sao Paulo managed to compete against the clubs from the big cities. But last season, they suffered relegation for the first time, and for this cash-strapped club, it could be a long road back. Their periods of success have coincided with the development of generational talents. During the 60s, they won 6 national titles and 2 Copa Libertadores, a total that may have been higher had they not ceased entering continental competition to tour the world playing lucrative exhibition matches displaying the talents of Pelé and co to the world. The next batch of Wonder Kids arrived in 2002 as Alano and Robinho helped Santos to 2 further league triumphs before the emergence of Neymar, who alongside fellow national team player Danilo spearheaded a 3rd Copa Libertadores title. But with a stadium holding just 16,000 spectators, remaining solvent has been challenging in an era where football is big business, with Santos relying on the sales of players such as Rodrigo to remain solvent, but relegation to the 2nd division has meant their income has further declined. So managing budgets will be the order of the day and developing players will be essential should you take on the challenge of restoring Santos to the top of South American football. We're moving a long way from the Copa Libertadores as we head back to Europe, where there are few counties in England that are not represented by a club in the Football League. One of those is Cornwall, but at least Truro City's promotion to Tier 6 in 2023 means that they at least have a playable club in Football Manager once more. The Tinners have spent many seasons playing outside of Cornwall, ground sharing with clubs as far away as Gloucestershire, but they now have a newly developed stadium to call home. Possibly Truro's greatest achievement was winning the FA Vase at Wembley in 2007, but that is a competition for clubs in tiers 9 and 10 of the English game, illustrating the journey Truro have already been on. The English leagues offer Football Manager fans the longest route to a top division in the game, and the challenge of taking a club from a city with a population of just 18,000 people into the Football League for the first time and all of the way to the Premier League would be a monumental achievement. After such a small club, surely it's time for another restoration project, and in Hungary we'll find Budapest Giants Újpest. Initially formed as a gymnastics club, they've enjoyed 2 golden eras in their history. During the 1930s, they were national champions 5 times, contributing many of Hungary's fabled national team players of the time, and in the 1970s they reigned once more, securing a further 7 league titles. They've twice reached the semi-finals of European competitions, including the 1974 European Cup, but since the fall of communism their fortunes have waned, and the club have not won the league since 1998. Last season saw them flirt with relegation as they finished 10th in the 12-team top flight, but if any manager can restore the good times to this club, surely it's you. But if the challenge of a rebuild in Hungary is not what you are looking for, how about taking on the most difficult save in the game? Of course, that's winning the Champions League with FC Vaduz. For those unfamiliar with the story, Vaduz are based in Liechtenstein but participate in the Swiss League. This means that they could win the Super League, but as a non-Swiss side, they would not be eligible for the Champions League. However, this does not block their route to European competition entirely, as Vaduz are eligible to participate in the Liechtenstein Cup, a competition they won for the 10th consecutive year in 2024. This provides them a place in the Europa Conference League, which, if Vaduz were ever to win, would qualify them for the Europa League. Of course, winning the Europa League would earn them a place in the Champions League, which would give you a shot at winning the continent's biggest prize. However, if you're unsuccessful, it's back down to the Europa Conference League for the following season, where the journey starts again. This is clearly a save for those that enjoy a long-term project and are prepared to encounter their fair share of heartbreak and setbacks. But were you to accomplish the goal of winning a Champions League with Vaduz, you may just be able to call yourself the greatest football manager of all time. On to W next, and Wisła Kraków in Poland. Now, taking over a club who just won the cup doesn't sound like a big project, and Wisła are admittedly one of Poland's most decorated clubs with 14 league titles, the joint second highest in history, but they are currently playing second tier football. They were on the verge of bankruptcy in 2019 but were rescued by a consortium that included former player Jakub Borzakowski. They still suffered relegation in 2022, and the distraction of last season's cup run resulted in a disappointing 10th place finish in the league. The Polish league is currently one of the most competitive in Europe, but whilst they remain a second-tier side, Wisła are unable to pursue their 15th league title. But should you make this your FM25 quest, you'll compete in European competition in your first season and can go in search of a speedy promotion before the quest for further honours begins. There are not many options for X, but we've come up with two, both from the Spanish city of Jerez. Hailing from Andalusia in southwestern Spain, Jerez Club Deportivo were founded by British wine merchants. After a history spent in the lower leagues, the club secured its first season in the top division in 2009, yet their stay would be short-lived as they finished bottom of the table. However, a worse campaign was to follow in 2012 as Jerez finished bottom of the Segunda division. Due to the state of their finances, the owner liquidated the club and the Football Association demoted them to the 4th tier. It was at this time that disgruntled supporters formed Jerez Deportivo, who started life in the 8th division of Spanish football. This fan-run club quickly progressed up the leagues while Club Deportivo suffered yet another relegation. In 2015, a referendum was held to decide whether to reunite the two sides, but the notion was voted down by Club Deportivo fans. Fast forward to today and both are now in Spain's 4th division and are playing in the same group. So will you take charge of the club founded in the 1940s or the supporter-owned club founded in 2013? The challenge at either would be vast as you aim to bring top-flight football back to Jerez. Only 2 clubs to go now, and why brings us back to Asia, where Young Lions are a club in Singapore with an interesting selection policy. Young Lions are run by Singapore's Football Association. The aim is to provide a club for players to represent whilst they are completing their mandatory national service, similar to South Korea's side Gimcheon Sangmu. This means the club's players are predominantly under the age of 23 and includes the loan signings of players from other clubs as they start their national service. However, if you take charge of Young Lions, this doesn't restrict you to just signing domestic players, as they can also sign foreign players to help them gain citizenship. And footballers from across Europe, Asia and Africa have represented them. Implementing their selection policy in the game is done via league rules that only apply to Young Lions, which caps the number of over 23s and foreign players allowed in the matchday squad. The club's highest finish in the Premier League is 3rd, and what an accomplishment it would be if you could guide them to the top of the table. And finally, to Z, where we conclude our journey in Croatia. The challenge here is to win the title with a side from Zagreb other than Dinamo. Of the 33 league campaigns contested since independence, Dinamo have won 25 of them. The only other club from the capital to win the league are NK Zagreb, but they are now in the amateur 5th division. However, there are other sides you could take on this challenge with. In the top division, there's Lokomotiva, runners-up in 2020, and in the 2nd division there is Sesveta, a feeder team for Dinamo, Jarun, who've achieved 3 promotions over recent seasons, and Dubrava, who reached the top flight in 1993, where despite relegation they enjoyed a famous victory over Dinamo. This mission would be another severe test of your football manager capabilities, so are you up to the challenge?